So I've spent the last 25 years in the motion picture industry and a little bit of time in music before that, working as the technical operations and technology strategy person at Disney Studios, at Technicolor, and at Paramount Pictures. So I have some experiences and some perspective that may be helpful to kind of explain to you guys. As Vaughn said, I think the publicity about this is we're going to talk about UV, and I will, but I'm going to give you a little bit of context as to how it came about in the first place and sort of what the thought process has been. So the first thing I'll do is describe the two acronyms relevant to this. UV, Ultraviolet, was a well-researched brand name that the organization that started this format that's about to launch, which is called DECE, Digital Entertainment Content Ecosystem. And the group realized after a year or two that DECE wasn't going to work as a consumer brand. So with a little bit of work, they came up with Ultraviolet as something that seemed like it would stick in people's heads and you could create a logo and a name out of it. And we'll talk a lot about what Ultraviolet is, but let me just back up a little bit and sort of give you context. Not that long ago, really, only just at the turn of the century, which is an interesting phrase to use for many of us, because we mean this most recent one, there was a major change in distribution technologies. Obviously, the sort of growth of broadband and internet penetration, the improvement in computing technologies and devices, and the advances in software applications from both Microsoft and Apple really started making catalytic changes in the way people consume media, whether it's music or video content. Certainly, we saw within just a couple of years, and funny, I was doing some date checking, and in 1997, there were VHS tapes to watch movies, and there were CDs to listen to music, and there was no Napster. That's really not that long ago. And in a very small period of time, in 98 actually, Sean Fanning released Napster to the world. Devices were made that could rip CDs very quickly and easily. The MP3 file format took off, and literally between 1998 and the year 2000, the music industry's distribution channel that they had been using since the introduction of CDs some 15, almost 20 years prior, was decimated, completely changed, gone. Went from 99% of the ways that they sold music was CDs and music stores, brick and mortar music stores, to today, and it was pretty rapid, the decline, less than 10% of music is sold on CDs. So at that time, I and many of my colleagues, I was at Disney at the time, and all of my colleagues in technology and strategy positions around the studios started saying, all right, what's this going to mean for us in the movie business? And there was a fair amount of music are small files, they're easy to move, movies are big, heavy files, they're hard to move, you really can't, copy them. There's an encryption on DVDs, which was just being released into the market in 2000. So we think we're safe. At least there was some thinking like that. There were others that were beginning to say, wait. I see a few of my colleagues in the room here today who were with me having that conversation. Wait, the threat of piracy and of ubiquitous electronic distribution of content is going to come at us, and it's going to come at us in a hurry, and we got to be prepared for it. So on we go into the beginning of the century, 2001, the iPod's released, and that really was the sort of final death knell in physical distribution for music. Once the iTunes Store was created and the iPod was created, absolutely, completely changed the music distribution business forever. The threat of piracy, what it did to the music industry, legitimate distribution has since emerged as a reasonable business, iTunes being the majority for music distribution, but a whole lot of the consuming public started getting their music through non-monetized channels, I'll call it. Right? And really, from 99, 2000, 2001, 2, 3, there was about 3, 4, 5 years where the music industry didn't really know what to do. They didn't embrace digital distribution. They didn't do big licensing and catalog pushes into iTunes to make it compelling. They are over that now and have done so. But there was a lag where, frankly, the appetite from consumers was massive to electronically get music. They couldn't get it. So you had changing technology landscape, you had piracy availability, and you had no legitimate alternative. It was around then that we in the technology community started saying, okay, let's fast forward a little bit. This is going to happen to us. So what are we going to do about it? And I can remember going to trade shows, NAB shows in 2003, where companies like IBM, in collaboration with us, were beginning to talk about something called domain-based rights model. And that is a digital consumption model where a DRM technology could be used to express you as an individual, your devices as all yours, and give you the ability to buy a piece of content, whether it's music or movies, and register it in a way that you could copy it amongst your devices and use it in a sort of a interoperable fashion amongst a bunch of devices. So, post the perfect storm that was the music industry collapse, DVD, however, at the same time, was growing like crazy. The DVD phenomenon happened, and this is just an interesting thing that consumer behaviors really do follow ease, value, quality. In the case of DVD, while music was going like this for physical and digital was taking off, at the same time, actually, the home entertainment market was exploding. And this was part of the sort of slowness to react, perhaps, on the part of the movie industry as to, what do we do with digital distribution? Well, why are we worrying about it? We got double-digit growth in DVD distribution. We're selling more DVDs than ever. I took over the DVD authoring department in 2000, we'll call it, and we did 9 SKUs, 9 individual DVDs to cover the world. 12 months later, we were doing 250 SKUs per month. Huge growth all over the world. However, little did we know in 2000, a young man in Norway was figuring out how to hack a DVD and unlock it and put it out onto the internet in the clear. Still big, heavy files, but lo and behold, the studios become aware of DCSS. And lots of litigation, lots of fighting, the rising tide. We all know where that ends up. It's not a good story. So concurrent with the DVD growth, we continued to think about domain-based rights, digital distribution, and the idea of you and your devices and your family as potentially a solution to it. Actually, one of the initial founders and president of the DEC organization, Mitch Singer, is a good friend of many of ours in the room, at Sony Pictures, was the first one to come around to the studios. I remember him coming to see us, probably 2003, with the domain-based rights model pitch. We got to do this. Little bit of slowness to get off the ball on it on the part of the studios as an industry in total because DVD was growing. At the same time, rumors about a new high-definition format was happening. So a lot of focus was taken by all of us, including me personally, on looking into and researching the high-definition formats that were emerging and trying to figure out how to get a single best format into the marketplace. Well, high definition did ultimately come to the marketplace, unfortunately, due to politics, money, and power in a consortium that included studios, electronics industries, gaming industries, and consumer electronics industries. A format war was launched, not unlike what happened when VHS and Betacam launched some 25 years prior. Lesson not learned, it took 2.5 years before the HD DVD Blu-ray format war was ended. Blu-ray's in the marketplace. It hasn't quite done what I think many people in the physical goods business thought it would do in terms of taking over for DVD. It's become a new release and a hits format, and the big popular action movies, they're doing pretty well on Blu-ray. But catalog and sort of non-action, non-event films are still selling pretty briskly on the DVD format as well. So you've got 2 formats. So now the idea of UV started getting socialized, or not UV at the time, DECE, the domain-based rights model. The whole idea behind the domain-based rights model that is UV is to get something that was equal to, really better than, the physical disk usage model. Physical disk is pretty easy to understand. You know, all of the kind of the rules around what you can do with it are pretty easy because it's tangible, you can see it. Oh, I have a disk, if I have a player, I can play it. And I can give it to my friend, or I can give it to my sister, my parents, whatever, I can move it around the house. All of that utility is pretty well expressed just in the fact that the format is a physical type of format. So the idea behind the development of DECE was to create something that really did better than that. That was highly interoperable between devices so that this format could work on a phone, a mobile phone, a device, a smart tablet, a set-top box, a connected TV, any of those. The idea is that the format would be available through all retail channels, whether that's iTunes, Best Buy, Netflix, you name it. And all service providers would allow you to get the content streamed to your home. So whether you're a Comcast subscriber or AT&T or Verizon, create a really ubiquitous format, a brand that would be understood, a format that would be used on all devices, and bring it to the marketplace, combining with that the rights being persistently held in the cloud so that you buy a UV movie, you register yourself into the UV locker, and the fact that you own that movie is now known persistently by that entity. And even if you lost all your devices, your house burned down, or you, for whatever reason, lost all of your content, you could go get a new device, you could re-register with UV, identify yourself, and be able to get that content back again. That seems like a pretty valuable utility to have. The boundaries that were put around it, 12 devices. And the debate and the discussion that was had within the DECE organization as they were having these conversations is, let's put a boundary that most normal families, domains, won't bump up against. Steve Jobs did it with the iTunes model. He took, what was it, 5 devices, I think. And that's how many devices you can have. So the idea was, well, let's get outside of that, because I know I personally, and probably everybody here that's got iTunes has bumped into that 5 devices boundary and thought, well, that's a pain in the, now that you got a pad and a phone and 3 laptops and a desktop computer, you're over the limit. Don't do that. So we made a lot of compromises. 12 devices, 6 people are in the domain. So I thought, the average American family is, I think that's over the 2.3 kids, that whatever the statistic is now. So it's a large enough boundary that you could have 6 people in your domain. 3 concurrent streams is what's described right now. So out of those 6 people and those 12 devices, at any given moment in time, you could be having the same movie streamed to 3 different places. Now the model for UV is it's a file and you can download it and have it locally on your device, in which case you don't need a stream. But if you're on a tablet or a phone, you may not have the storage and want to keep it on that, you'll need to be able to stream it. Multiple DRMs have been approved. There's, I think, 5 currently been approved, including all the well-known ones, so that whether you're on a Zune player or a PS3 or an Android phone, the DRMs that those all use will be able to interoperate and get a copy of the film streamed to it or downloaded to it. There is no playback control, which is a piracy technology that had been debated and developed, and it actually was included in the AACS Blu-ray copy protection format, never actually turned on, and that was a watermark technology where movie screens had a invisible mark embedded into the soundtrack, that when a legal device would try to play that pirated copy, it would detect that this is a theatrical camcorder of the movie, I'm going to stop it from playing back. Wasn't successful for a variety of multi-industry tension reasons, frankly, and is currently not in the UV format that's about to release. So let me ask some of the students that are here in the audience, what I just described as the UV format, would that make you want to buy a movie versus just wait till it comes on Netflix for your $99 or $9.99 subscription? What do you guys think? Would you want to buy it? Depends on the price. Fair enough. That's the question that's facing the studios right now. And I think what's not been described, what's not been decided, price. There are risks to a successful launch. UV is currently communicated to the industry and to the marketplace that it can and will have launches in the second half of this year. There has been no good, clear communication about price into the marketplace. Some key players have stayed out of the UV format, and these are some of the obstacles and the risks that exist in the successful launch of the UV format. Two of them that are fairly significant. One is Apple, is not participating in UV, and the other is Disney Studios. Beyond that, there's 50 companies in the consortium, and they all intend to support it, and that 50 companies includes all 5 other studios. It includes ostensibly all the major consumer electronics companies, Sony, Samsung, LG, Panasonic, you name it. It includes all of the major network operators, including AT&T, Comcast, Verizon. They're all a party to this. So there is a lot of momentum behind it. There is a lot of potential for them to pull together the things that make a successful launch. But what we haven't yet seen in the marketplace is any good, clear communication about what is the value proposition of UV, how are we going to launch it, and most significantly, as you point out, what's the price, right? Now, it could be much more competitive than a DVD. If I told you, buy the UV right for the same price that you'd buy a Blu-ray disc, way too high, way too high, right? Half of that. Interesting. Now, the supply chain side of this equation, UV is a lot cheaper to get to you because we don't have to manufacture author discs, manufacture discs, put them in a box, put them on a truck, put them in a store, have all that margin through all that marketplace. So they could be less expensive. Waiting to see. At the same time, DVD and Blu-ray disc sales are down from the peak, which is 2007 to 2008, to this year. They're down 40%. So the studios are struggling with the fact that home entertainment, which makes a significant component of the overall profitability of a studio, of a title, is down 40%. They're about to launch a format into the marketplace that's a digital format. To do it right, it's got to be well communicated, it's got to be really interoperable, really compelling, and it's got to be at the right price. A lot of variables are still left to individual studios. The UV format doesn't particularly articulate price. It doesn't particularly articulate what are your streaming rights are described. You do have the right to stream. Do you have to pay extra for that or not? So done wrong, you could end up buying from one retailer and they say, yeah, for, let's call it half of a Blu-ray, so we'll call it $12.99. You get the UV right. But that only includes one stream for free for a year. And then if you want to stream after a year, you're going to have to pay some subscription fee or subscribe to me, whatever. Another studio might say, no, I made a deal with this retailer and it's going to be free. Those kinds of complexities, what you actually get and at what price, are going to be hugely important to the success or the failure of the format, because if nothing iTunes hasn't taught us is make it really simple and really consistent. And there are still a lot of questions yet to be asked. We don't yet know how many consumer electronics devices or consumer applications, software apps, that'll run on your Android or on your PC or on your iPhone eventually, are actually going to come into the marketplace. So there's still a lot of risk there. And really, at the end of the day, the big question is, are consumers interested in ownership, or is the entire consumption marketplace moving to a subscription model? I want to rent, or I want to subscribe to a service where essentially I can rent and look at content whenever I want, but I don't really have that hunter-gatherer feel that I did in the boom days of DVD, where I loved having that shelf and I have my things and I put them up and I could go and scan. I don't know about you guys, but I have too many DVDs. It's a pain in the butt to find one to watch, right? I don't want to look at all that stuff. Go to Netflix or go to iTunes. So there is a lot of risk. The format's going to launch in the coming year. The big questions really around, is the ownership model going to take hold in the digital space? It did in music with a successful launch of iTunes. A lot of people converted over, not everybody, from a piracy and free model, but 99 cents, yeah, I own it, I can push it around my devices. A lot of folks went ahead and moved over and are, enjoying the ownership model in the digital space for music. Can it happen in the movie business? I think the real big question is, will there be a really, really unified consumer launch of the product in the next 6 to 12 months? And that's a question I'm not sure I can answer yet. So that's kind of the story about what UV is, where the history was, where we came from. I think questions, thoughts, comments about it?
I assume you've looked at sort of the relative value of, or the relative price of music before this happened and after it happened,
right,
with iTunes, and related that to the value of movies before this and with this. What do you come up with?
Well, actually, in the ownership sense of the word, 99 cents a song, if you do buy the whole album, it's actually more expensive than the CD was, in many cases, depending on how many tracks there were on the CD. The difference is, however, the number of people buying the whole album or CD versus buying the one or two hits that they liked off of it changed the revenue model significantly. So that's really what changed in the music industry's case. In the movie industry's case, not apples for apples. Some of the behavioral things are apples, and you can compare them pretty closely. But in this case, you can't, because you can't really snack a movie. You can't buy a portion of a movie. You wouldn't want to. You need to buy the whole movie. But certainly, that's the debate that's raging in the studios. Debate, just the discussion being had in the studios is, how are we going to price a UV right? Are we going to put a UV right on the Blu-ray disc? If you go to the UV website, you'll see that's part of their marketing splash that's on there, is you can buy a UV-enabled Blu-ray disc, and then you'll get the Blu-ray disc for the big high-definition experience in your big screen TV, and you get all those UV digital rights to watch that same movie on all your various other devices. What price are you going to pay for that? Are you going to pay the price of a Blu-ray disc today plus 50% again, let's say, just for giggles? You're going to pay $34 or $37 to be able to buy the Blu-ray plus UV? How's that going to compare to what the UV-only digital right is? A lot of analysis has been done. Definitive decisions have not been made yet. And obviously discussions among the studios have to be really careful about pricing. There's all the competitor antitrust issues around it. But yeah, absolutely. The history from the music industry is being watched very carefully. I would hazard to tell you guys that, listening to the story arc I just gave you, in almost every case, decisions to move to a digital distribution model happened later than the consumer demand for it, right? And that's where we stand today in 2011.
That's why we have a piracy gap, or why we created a piracy window.
Fills that gap when it happens. Did you have a question, Vaughn?
Offers a Blu-ray DVD, a regular standardized DVD, along with the digital rights download, and how this is going to be different than UV.
Sure. Well, as I said, Disney did not join the UV consortium, at least not to date, because they just wanted to try their own version of it. I think it's a good experiment they're doing. I think it's definitely useful to start putting, and by the way, Disney's not the only one to include a digital copy. You see almost every studio has at one level or another offered either an iTunes copy or a Windows Media copy on a special edition DVD or Blu-ray disc that they've offered. That's something called a second session, where the file is just on the disc as a data file, and then you register and get that downloaded. Again, the promise of UV, which should be better than what Disney is offering, is Disney is only offering to a specific format. So again, whether it's iTunes or a Windows Media DRM, UV is going to say, you got a digital right, it'll work on everything. Android, Marlin, phone, tablet, everything. So you've got a completely interoperable right to use it on any different format. And that'll be the differentiator in success that UV will have. Others?
Hi. How worried are you guys with piracy? Because you're going to be given access to a digital file.
Right.
And once the pirates get a hold of it.
Sure. Piracy is a constant and permanent part of, frankly, everything. You can buy knockoff purses, shoes, clothes, movies. It's a part of unfortunately, the part of the human race and the way we behave. The issue is to try and continue to raise barriers around piracy so that it's illegal, so that people both culturally and legally feel like I'm doing something bad, right? And that requires legislation, it requires education. The studios are very worried about that. We spent a lot of time, my last couple of years with Paramount, we had some very senior executives get really passionate about it. And the hope is that, again, suppress piracy. Is right now, if you guys haven't done this, you should. Just to know how easy it is, go to Google, just type in watch movies free online. The search result you get will have one or two legitimate sites. Hulu will usually come up, and the rest of them will be illegal sites. And typically, I've done a presentation on this a number of times called the 4 clicks presentation. From typing that search query into the Google, about 4, maybe 5, sometimes 6 on the top. Clicks later, you're streaming an illegal copy of the movie. So we need to put some boundaries against that to make that harder to do, to make you have to work harder, and we need to put a legal framework so that as you enter society as people that are getting jobs and realizing that law is there for a reason and government's there for a reason, you're going to start feeling bad about, geez, I am stealing this. Especially, I hope, the people in this room, since you're in the entertainment industry.
People here have downloaded a movie illegally off of the internet. Oh, come on, you're.
But just for education purposes, purely.
Yeah, I'm not with the FBI, but I don't believe you're all lying, by the way. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty easy. So yeah, studios are very worried about it. It's a lot of work. Again, make no mistake, nobody's thinking that we're going to do away with it. It'll never be done away with, but if we make it harder, and to the conversation about what UV is supposed to be, the strategy behind UV is make it really easy to buy it legitimately and make that offer pretty compelling. Man, it'll work on all my devices. I don't have to worry about whether it's Apple or Android or Windows or any of that stuff. It'll just play on everything I've got. That to me should be pretty cool. If it can come to market and that can get messaged really well, that'd be fun. And so that's really play both sides of the ball, as we used to say. You got to play offense and defense. Fight piracy in an offensive way, or a defensive way, but be offensive about your distribution strategy.
Javier?
I would like to add that one of the things is to create conscience on the people.
Yes.
That the copies of the UV or the iTunes things is actually a good quality product. Because most of the pirates is
not very good quality.
It's very bad quality. So if you want good quality, then you can sell that as a selling point.
Yeah, absolutely. And, 8 years ago when I was pitching the high definition formats and saying high def is going to be quality's king, quality's going to matter, it's actually turned out that not everybody cares that much about high definition. It's not that much better, and a DVD, even on your 50-inch plasma screen, still looks pretty good. And a lot of consumers are saying, yeah, I'm not going to replace my Indiana Jones movie with a Blu-ray disc. The Indiana Jones DVD is just fine. Thank you very much. So quality does matter. And to your point, Javier, that the camcorded copies, from one of these little cameras sitting off in a corner under somebody's jacket and lousy audio, yeah, it really doesn't look very good. And a good, legitimate copy will be a heck of a lot better. So it's a part of the marketing campaign, definitely, the messaging. Yes, sir.
UV affect any of the current distribution windows?
The introduction of a new digital format with all those value props that I just described doesn't have to change Windows. Windows are being discussed and debated as we speak, and you've heard about early premium VOD window being introduced in some experiments just in the last few weeks. That's been announced and that's been discussed for years. So Windows can and will likely change, and then where UV fits is another separate decision. Does UV fit in the home entertainment window, the sell-through window as it's called now, which is DVD, Blu-ray, and UV? Does UV get moved up and you can buy the UV right in the premium window? It's a possibility. Not decided, but they're pretty much two different sort of levers in the distribution strategy space, what you do with Windows and then what you do with formats, basically. All right, there's one more question down here if you have time.
If you could even answer this one. Since this is the business of entertainment and we're talking about young people and the future and all that, and when you look at these models and you see the consolidation of our industry in some areas,
right,
and you also see that DVD and Blu-ray is a manufacturing process.
Right.
As this rolls out, just like with the music industry, you start to see a less manufacturing going on. You said 40% down in DVD.
Yeah.
That means 40% less discs are being made.
Yes.
It affects replicators. It affects everybody. So
absolutely.
My question is, how does this affect the economics of our industry from a standpoint of manufacturing?
Well,
we're getting more and more away from that as
yeah.
the cloud becomes more real.
Yeah. The cost side of the economics can and should change dramatically in a favorable way from a studio, from a filmmaker's perspective. I make my movie, it costs so much to get actors and cameramen and post-production and get it done. Then I got to distribute my movie to millions of people. The distribute to millions of people will be a whole lot cheaper if it was all electronic than it is to stamp all those discs and put them in stores and all of that, to say nothing of the fact it's a whole lot greener, which, by the way, that should be a part of the UV story. It's a very green transition into digital distribution. However, for people looking to work in the field, being in the plastics industry right now, it's all about plastics, young man, right? Not so much in the disc manufacturing. I wouldn't say that's a really bright future. There's other ways to use plastic and make money in the business, but disc manufacturing is clearly on the downturn. The big major manufacturers are consolidating. They have been for some time now. And in fact, all of the big disc manufacturers have opened substantial investments in digital distribution supply chain infrastructures to come to the studios and say, hey, I did your DVD distribution, now I'll do your digital distribution. And so if you're looking for a career path to go, definitely moving into digital distribution and digital asset management infrastructures and how to get bits moved around the ecosystem smartly and innovate in that space is an absolutely right investment to make, and maybe not focus so much on, I want to be the next best disc stamping equipment. All right.
Any other questions? Thanks very much, Chris.
Okay, thanks for hearing me out.